Hi everyone, welcome to my channel where I get to show you how food safety should look like on your plate. My name is Tumi, and for the past 5 years I've been doing my research on food safety and human rights law. So please subscribe to raise more awareness on food safety and other related rights. We are currently on a road to at least 100 subscribers by the end of May. So please share, please like, please subscribe, and please press that notification bell. Today we will be talking about accountability. What happens when food safety fails us? Who do we hold accountable? I mean, just recently a tragic event happened when an 8-year-old from Mafeking passed away after consuming snacks that she bought from the side of the street. She bought them with her sister, and her sister was left severely ill in hospital. It's such heartbreaking cases that make us question the issue of accountability. We can start off by just highlighting or outlining some of the issues that we have around food safety. Some of them we did mention in my previous video. The first is that there is no direct right to safe food. Number two is that most informal traders, including spaza shops, are unregistered. Number three is that there is a few health inspectors in South Africa. Actually, the United Nations recommends one health inspector per 10,000 people, and that is not happening in South Africa. Number four is that the victims of food poisoning are not often able to prove that what they consumed is actually what made them ill. They are unable to retain any evidence, so it's very difficult to prove that whatever you have consumed is what made you sick. On top of that, some of the victims of food poisoning are unable to obtain legal services, mostly because of affordability. Legal services obviously do not come cheap. The fifth issue that we have is that there are low penalties for people that compromise food safety. We have seen that sometimes a shop can be closed today by authorities and then tomorrow it's operating again. And lastly, there is rare prosecution of these people as well. As we have seen, there's not a lot of arrests that are made, and these cases, they are often just left unsolved. However, the government does have ways to enforce accountability on both big and small shops or businesses. The first one is obtaining what is referred to as a certificate of accountability, which is the COA. Now, the COA is issued by the local environmental health department, and what this document does is that it confirms that the business premises have complied with both hygiene and safety requirements in terms of the storage of food and the cleanliness of the shop itself. Now, the second is obtaining what is referred to as a municipal trading license. So what this document does is it ensures that traders operate within designated zones, and then it also ensures that traders comply with the necessary bylaws that have been set by the municipality. Now, shops have to comply with very high standards of cleanliness and to ensure that there is proper waste management and that food is not expired and that food should be well maintained. On top of this, they have to ensure that there's proper storage and handling of food, and that food should be stored very far away from chemicals. We did see that in Soweto, a number of kids passed away after consuming food that was contaminated with rat poison. So it's in such instances where the presence of the COA and having a municipal trading license, they help to avoid such unfortunate instances. There have been initiatives by the government in response to food poisoning incidences that have been happening all across the country. And after the listeriosis outbreak, there was what is referred to as the 2018 food labeling regulations. And what these do is to ensure that food premises should adhere to strict hygiene standards. And then now recently, in the past year, 2024, the government has pushed for spaza shops to be registered, because now spaza shops being registered means that inspections can happen more often and the enforcement of existing food safety law can be done more efficiently. And then the third is that registered spaza shops are now eligible for government support, which includes financial assistance and training programs, which are meant to enhance service quality and food safety standards. Now, even if a person is an informal trader or someone who is selling, say, meat on the side of the street, they can now have training on how to properly handle food. Now we will be talking about the consequences of non-compliance, which can be in terms of fines, in terms of temporary closures such as prohibition orders, and in terms of immediate shutdowns where authorities can decide that there has been serious violation and the place needs to be closed immediately. Now, these consequences have been highlighted in the various food safety legislation that we discussed in the previous video. And I'll be telling you the relevant sections. The first one is the Foodstuffs, Cosmetics and Disinfectant Act. In its section 2 prohibits the sale, the manufacture, as well as the importation of foodstuffs that are harmful, that are misleading and can be detrimental to your health. And then in its section 16, it outlines the penalties, which include fines or imprisonment or both. The second one is the Meat Safety Act, and in its section 11, it states that it's an offense to slaughter animals outside registered abattoirs. And then it covers offenses such as criminal prosecution, confiscation, and the closure of facilities. The third one is the Consumer Protection Act. And in its section 110, it says it's an offense to misrepresent goods, such as tampering with the expiry date, and there are penalties which include fines, imprisonment, or both. And then number 4, we have the Animal Diseases Act, which says it's a criminal offense to fail to report affected animals or to even sell meat of affected animals or products from an animal that has any disease which could be harmful for human consumption. And then fines and imprisonment fall under section 28. Now, as a summary, violation could lead to arrests, criminal records, business closures, and even up to 10 years imprisonment for serious offenses. Now, it's also important to note that there is a difference between the small business responsibility or liability versus corporate responsibility or liability, and I'll tell you now. Now, small business responsibility is one for spaza shops and any other small business or informal trader. And then we have corporate responsibility, which is one for bigger supermarkets, bigger shops. Now, with corporate responsibility or liability, companies are held to high standards because of their capacity and infrastructure. And number 2, they have to comply with the Consumer Protection Act, the Meat Safety Act, rather all of the legislation that we have already discussed on food safety. Number 3 is that they are also required to comply with various international standards such as the HACCP, which we will discuss in more detail in a different video. Number 3, they are required to have traceability systems such as food safety audits and recall procedures. We usually see that if there's an affected food or item, big companies usually recall the affected products. Number 5 is that they could face both civil claims and criminal claims. Number 6 is that they are regulated more strictly by the 3 departments that deal with food safety that we did mention in the previous video: the Department of Health, the Department of Agric, and the Department of Trade. And then when we talk about small business responsibility or liability, such as your spaza shops and informal traders, those ones, they are regulated by the municipal bylaws and they are subjected to local inspections. And number 2, they are legally obligated under the acts that we have mentioned, but we have seen that enforcement may be a little bit weaker. But overall, whether it's a small business or it's a big company, the requirement for the COA, as we've mentioned, and a municipal trader's license, they are both requirements and have to be complied with by these establishments. So what we can dissect from the conversation so far is that there are 3 types of liabilities, and these are valid for both big companies and small businesses. The first is civil liability, the second is criminal liability, and then the third is administrative liability. Now, civil liability is more about compensation. If a food business makes you sick, then they have to pay certain damages or even medical costs. And then the second, criminal liability. It's about punishment. If a business or a company breaks food safety laws, then they have to be charged, and then they could face either fines or even jail time. And then we have administrative liability, which is when a food business breaks food safety rules, but it's not serious enough to be a crime. And that is where the municipality can issue out fines, penalties like fines or shutting down the place temporarily, or even revoking any certification. Another pressing issue that was brought to my attention in the comments in the previous video was what happens when someone goes into a store and then finds expired products, or what happens if you've already bought the product and then you're at home and then you realize that it is expired. Now, firstly, we have to understand the difference between an expiry date and a best before date. With the expiry date, food is no longer safe to eat after this date, and eating it could definitely be harmful to your health. And it's usually found on perishable goods such as milk, such as meat, and even medication. And selling expired food is a serious legal offense under acts of legislation that we have already spoken about, such as the Consumer Protection Act and the Foodstuffs, Cosmetics and Disinfectant Act. In contrast, when we speak about the best before date, the product is still somehow suitable for consumption. What may have changed could be the loss of quality, such as the taste and even maybe the texture. But these, a best before date, you usually find it on dry goods such as canned food products. And stores are legally allowed to sell food with best before date, but they have to clearly mark them for the consumer to be aware. By dry food, I know someone might be thinking of what biltong or something of the sort, but in food safety terms, dry food basically means food that has low moisture and cannot be spoiled very quickly, such as your pasta, your rice, and even canned foods. Now, what can you as a consumer do when you find that food has expired? There are a couple of steps that you can take. The first is you can either return the product to the shop manager and request a refund. This is within your right in the Consumer Protection Act. The other step is that if, say, you go back to the same store and then you find that the expired item is still on the shelves and hasn't been removed, then you can report it to the municipality's Environmental Health Division. Now, what happens then if you have already consumed the item and you have fallen ill? In such instances, then you can rely on the provisions that we have already discussed in the previous video, starting with the Constitution. Remember, you have your right to life, your right to human dignity, and your right to an environment that is not harmful. Then those are the provisions, together with the ones that you will find in the Consumer Protection Act, such as the ones that you find in the Foodstuffs, Cosmetics, and Disinfectant Act and other related legislation. Then you can rely on those provisions. An example would be in section 2 and 18 of the Foodstuffs, Cosmetics and Disinfectant Act, which clearly prohibits the sale of harmful goods to your health. And then the Consumer Protection Act in its sections 55 to 61, they cover the right to safe and good quality goods, and you are entitled to institute a claim where this has not been complied with. Now guys, you have to understand that the burden of proof lies on you as a consumer to prove that a certain food made you ill. So you have to take certain steps to take care of yourself first as a consumer. So remember the municipal trader's license and the COA, the certificate of acceptability that I spoke about at the beginning of this video. Those are things that you have to look out for when you enter into a certain shop, because they ensure that all the safety standards have been complied with. So these are mandatory by law to be displayed publicly, either at the entrance of a shop or on the wall behind the front counter. That is a place where it's easy for you as a consumer to see. So if you're a business owner that handles food, it's always wise for you to obtain a COA, the certificate of acceptability, and apply for a municipal trader's license, because this helps authorities to keep your food premises in check and ensure that your food premises have complied with the necessary safety and hygiene requirements. For example, say you didn't know that a certain chemical is not supposed to be stored with your food. They could advise you that, look, do not put that chemical there because it might contaminate food. So having them come and inspect your premises lessens the risk of your customers getting ill from the food that you sell. Since we have already established that there is no explicit right to safe food, rather a right to have access to sufficient food in South Africa. In our next video, let's look into more detail how this right to sufficient food came to be in the Constitution, and let's just talk more about it. Thank you for watching today's video. Don't forget to subscribe, to like, and to share.